Alright, so I'm just an average mountain biker. I like to mess about with tools, bikes. I ride bikes, I fix bikes. I've got a little part-time business doing it as well. Seen a lot of stuff online about Calibre Bossnuts, so I decided that I would treat myself to one during lockdown. Normally ride a giant Anthem, so wanted something with a bit slacker geometry that I can throw around in the woods. Far too old for it, but who cares. So this is a video about unboxing and prepping Calibre Bossnut. Right, not done this before, so that'll probably be rubbish, but seems to be a lot of interest on these bikes, so we ordered a Calibre Bossnut a week ago. Go outdoors and it's turned up yesterday, which I think is pretty good because we're in the middle of the lockdown. So I'm going to open it up, see what we need to do to build it. I've heard a few dubious reports about these, that they're coming out of the boxes with a few things wrong with them. This one looks okay. The box is a bit damaged at the front. I don't know why. Inside it's all wrapped up pretty well, so we'll see what comes out. See? No scratches, no damage on that. That's all good. A few tie wraps in there. Seems fairly well packed. I don't know where these bikes ship from, but most of it's intact. There we go. Right. Front wheel, still got some air in the tyre, which is a bit of a surprise. All rubbish. I've had saw a couple of things online saying that the discs will warp, but until we get them on I'm not going to know that anyway. Seems fairly well protected. All these plastic discs on it. It's going to keep all the rubbish out of the hubs. And the discs are marked as manufactured by SRAM. Looks alright. It looks like the rest of the bike is in one bit. So, box down here, presumably with some not very good quality pedals. Yeah, so you've got the usual safety kit. Pad spacers for the transit. Rear reflector, couple of pedals and a bell, which I always put on the bike. Perfect. So front wheel's out, the rest of the bike is all in one piece I think, by the looks of it. still quite a bit of cardboard packing in there, so I'll whip this out. This optimistically. And my assistant can hold on to that for a sec. Just stop it falling over. Thank you. What else have we got in there? So rattling about at the bottom of the box, we've got the seat clamp quick release. Receipt. And there's another disc pad spacer which must have fallen out of the box. Right, get rid of this box and have a look at the bike itself. Okay, so we've got the rid of the box. What we did notice is that the seat clamp had come apart in the box. So we managed to dig out, tucked underneath everything in the bottom of the box, these 3 bits. Hopefully that will be enough to get the seat clamp working. So I'm going to put that together and set the bike up in the stand. Okay, so we put the seat clamp back in. All the bits were there, which is quite handy. If they weren't, I'd be really annoyed actually, because you probably want to get out and ride it. And that would be annoying if you just got let down by a seat clamp. So I'm just going to cut all the rest of the packing off, see what kind of condition the bike's come in, see what we need to do to get it put together. It's fairly well wrapped up actually. So we've got a few bikes already in the family. A couple of hardtail Cannondales that the kids have got. I've got a Giant Anthem, which is quite a nice bike, but it's got kind of, I don't know, what would you call it? Pretty full-on geometry really. It's a sort of head down, arse up racing bike. So I wanted something a bit more relaxed, so I could go and mess about in the woods with the kids, and hopefully this will fit the bill. I didn't want to spend too much money. People seem to like these, so. Excuse the knife, it was a gift from a friend. Thank you very much. There's a couple of little marks on the frame, but nothing that's actually scratched the paintwork so far, which is good. See if I can not scratch it myself. Back end all done. It looks okay. There's a little bit of just dust on the cranks. The rear triangle hasn't got any scratches or marks on it. I can see the important bits like the shock, really clean. That's also good. Yeah, and to be fair, there's the only polystyrene in the whole packing is just 3 little pieces. So if you do want to save the planet, well, at least Calibre are doing their bit. couple more bits on the headset and the stem, and that I think is that. There's some horrific videos on YouTube and Facebook saying about the wheels coming out bent. That's pretty true, to be honest. Looking around the rest of the frame, there's that little, I think it's got a tiny little dink on the other side of the frame, but I might, I'll see if that's just some sticky stuff left over from the packing. Other than that, to be honest, the bike has come out of that box in perfect condition from what I can see so far. Right, let's have a look at putting it together. Right, so I've had a look round the frame, all looking good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put it together, just assemble it, the basics, and then have a look at what I need to do over and above that. So the first thing I'll do is put the handlebars in. Should be straightforward, it's just 4 bolts. It's got the torque settings on the head, on the fork clamp as 10 Newton meters, and they're 6mm bolts. The ones on the handlebar clamp itself are 5mm bolts, so it doesn't have the torque settings on, but most of my other bikes have the torque settings on, and they're usually about 5 to 6 Newton meters. So I'm not going to bore you by torquing them all up, but rest assured I will be torquing them all up when I've done, to make sure that they're the correct settings. So I've never made a video like this before, so I don't know whether I'm supposed to stop the video while I'm unscrewing bolts and edit it beautifully and then put them back in. But this at least will show you how awkward it is, or not. So there's no branding on the stem. It looks pretty standard actually. I've got a specialised stem on one of my other bikes. It looks very similar to that. Similar sort of feel, quality of it. That looks alright. Make sure the cables are going the right way around the headstock. It's got a little central cross locator on the front of the headstock, which should help a little bit, but again, I'm going to take it out for a test ride and see where I want all the brakes and the bars, all the positioning of those, and I'll maybe drop the bars a couple of rings down as well. I'm not going to go through that all in this part of the video. I might do it later on. It's a little bit of a test ride. But putting this together, I mean, these screws, you know, there's no grinding. They don't feel like they're grinding when I'm screwing them in, which is nice. They all feel like they've been machined well. I know it's basic stuff, but I really didn't know what I was going to get when I bought the bike. So far, first impressions are very good actually. So I'm doing the headset up, the handlebar clamp up. If you've not done this before, try and make the gap at the top and the bottom the same. And when you are tightening them up, just do them in diagonals. So top left, bottom right, top right, bottom left. You should have an equidistant gap on all 4 of the bolts. And just keep doing them alternately, top left, bottom right, top right, bottom left. So I'm not going to torque them up, but I've been doing this for a few years and I reckon that's about 4 Newton meters. The brakes are pointing in completely the wrong direction and they are tight on the bars, so I'm just going to loosen those up with the Allen bolts again. So they must have been put on the bars that way for packing, make it a bit easier. Same with the gears, so I'm just going to run them round to an angle that I think will be about right, and again I need to set them up once I'm sat on the bike. I've not had SRAM brakes on any bike. I've had Shimano brakes on, I think we've got Shimano brakes on 4 of the bikes we've got in the garage, and they work really well. And I've got Avid brakes on 1 of the bikes, and if you can ever get them set up properly, they're fantastic. Right, so that's the handlebars in place. Front wheel, it's on a Maxwell axle, and that's got the torque settings on it, 9 to 13.5 Newton meters. So that's all good, it helps you out. I think you will need a torque wrench if you're going to build this yourself, especially if you're not used to building bikes. You don't want to be over tightening your brand new bicycle. Try and knock myself out. I've got it in an awkward position, so hopefully you can see it on the camera. Let's tighten up the Maxwell. Again, I'm going to do it hand tight. Just check that quickly. So it looks like the disc's rubbing, but we can sort that out afterwards. The wheels, not too bad at all. This cable at the front is not in the cable guide. I don't know why, so I'll pop that in the cable guide. And I think I'll put a tie wrap on the fork leg as well, just to keep that out of the way. I saw a few pictures of really long front brake cables. This isn't, it's fine actually, and it's set up in the UK with the front brake on the right hand side. Right, so that's the front wheel in, handlebars on. Next thing is the pedals. Now the pedals that came with the bike, thank you very much. The pedals that came with the bike, yeah, they're going to just go down there with the cardboard packing. I've bought some pedals to go on it, which are DMR V12s, magnesium. Now, if you're fitting pedals, I did get a bag of washers, and these have got recessed hole around the thread, so you are supposed to use a washer with any pedals that you put in. I'm going to put a bit of grease on them as well, because why not? Where is the grease? Where is my grease? Thanks. Don't know what I do without my able assistant. It's just basic grease. I don't use bike specific stuff because you tend to pay a lot more money, and I'm not sure it's any better quality than the stuff you get from a motor factory. So I'm just going to put a little bit of grease in, mainly because I'm quite likely to change the pedals over quite a few times, from SPDs to flats and SPDs back to flats again, depending on what I'm riding and where we're riding. Right, so I've got pedals, got the washers. Just take one out of there. That's the wrong one. Spins in quite nicely. The thread seems right. Again, if you've not put the pedals in before, when you're threading the pedals, there's a reverse thread on the left hand side. Oops. So you're always tightening towards the front of the bike. It's the same on the bottom bracket as well, except for some external ones. So again, I'm going to do that hand tight for now. God, those gears don't feel very nice. Same with the other one. Washer on. It's a bit awkward because I'm doing it around the back of the bike. In fact, let's just spin that around there. And again goes towards, so there's a reverse thread on this side. You'll be there all day if you're trying to thread it the other way around, and you might damage the thread, which is not ideal. Again, really just nipping those up, because I'd rather get the bike built and then go through all the torque settings once it's done. So, don't know if you can see that right, but that's it. That's the basics built. So it looks really good for the money, to be honest. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so there's a few things that I'm going to do to the bike that you might or might not want to do to the bike. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to take the reflectors off. So just grab a screwdriver and turn it anti-clockwise, and they kind of snap out. They just clog up with mud. If you're going to use it as a mountain bike, they're just going to clog up with mud. If I was sending my kids out on a paper round, I'd leave them on. So that's reflector off. Same for the front one. Just be careful of the spokes when you're doing it. Keep those for later. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is I want to take off the plastic ring. Now this ring is designed to stop the chain going into the spokes if your derailleur isn't set up properly. If your derailleur is set up properly, it shouldn't go into the spokes, and this again will just fill up with mud and become a bit of a bind. It's held on, if you can still see that, with these 1, 2, 3, 4 plastic clips. So I'm going to take the plastic clips out. Now the ideal way, if you've got the tools, is to use a cassette remover, one of these things. Take the wheel off, take the cassette off, and then that will just come straight off. I'm guessing that quite a few people watching this might not have a cassette tool, so I'm going to show you a bit of a cheat way of getting it off. I'm just going to use a medium-sized screwdriver, pop out these little plastic clips. Just be very careful of the spokes. I'm trying to push it only against the plastic, so there's no pressure on the spokes. And the last one here, and then that leaves the disc. Now you're not going to be able to get that off without cutting it, so you either need a strong pair of scissors, some side cutters, or I've got some metal cutters. So I don't know if you can see that. I'm just going to take these tin snips, carefully cut through it, not going near the spokes or the cassette. I'm going to do it around both sides to make it easier to get off. So one is done already. There we go. That takes that off. Another job done. Okay, the third thing that I noticed on the rear triangle is, in fact my son noticed it, thank you, is when we are in the higher, the larger rings at the back. I don't know if you can see this, if you can zoom in on that. The way the cable is routed down here and across, it's actually pushing on the chainring. So as you go through, it's tapping on the chainring. You wouldn't need to ride that very far before it wears down completely. You see that? Yeah? So what I'm going to do, and I hate myself for doing it because I haven't got any black tie wraps. There's like a groove in the chainstay here. So I'm going to put 2 tie wraps in. I'm going to try and leave a little bit of flex here because obviously there's movement in this. So I'm going to try and leave a little bit of flex on here. But I'm going to put a couple of tie wraps close together there and tuck that in there. We'll see how that works. Have to ride in it a bit and we'll see if that's a good fix or if there's a better way of doing it. I'm sure if you go on the forum, everyone's got a different solution for doing it. But I'm going to try this. So I don't want to take too much from the back because ideally this cable should be coming straight out from the back of the neck, especially when it's lower down. I'm looking again at this and thinking if I just put 1 tie wrap around here. No, it's going to slide down, that's not going to work. So maybe 1 through there. I'm trying to do it in one job. No, that also isn't going to work. So I'm going to put that. So I've got a bit slack at the front there, so that's good. I'm going to put 2 in there and make sure it doesn't foul the chain ring again. It's quite handy that they're white, at least you can see where I've put them. It's going to be worth keeping an eye on that later on. Okay, you see that, Luke? So now there's a good finger clearance in there. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to damage the cable. Okay, so the back brake is okay actually. It's not rubbing. There's fairly good clearance to it, and it's centered quite well. So that's come out of the factory quite well. The front one is rubbing, so I'll show you how to set up the brakes on the front one. I'm going to set up the gears last of all once everything else is done. So for the rear triangle, that's it. Okay, so looking at the front end of the bike, I've loosely done their handlebars, moved the brakes into rough positions. I'm going to set them all up how I want them and then I'll torque them up. What I have noticed is if you can hear that the front brake is rubbing on the disc. So I'm going to show you the easy way to set that up. Don't critique my mechanic skills too much, people. I'm just trying to show people an easy way to set it up. And the easiest way to set it up is to loosen the 2 bolts. Now these are usually have Loctite on them, which is like a thread glue. These don't feel like they do, because nothing's sort of cracked as I've undone it, and I'm not going to put thread lock on them at this stage, although I will once I've set them up. So if you loosen it, you can see now, you can see that there's movement. This is like a floating caliper you'd have on a motorbike at the minute with the bolts undone. So what I tend to do, if I just want to quickly adjust them, is clamp the front brake. Probably can't see that on the video, but I've got the front brake held on, and then I'm just going to nip them up a little bit. I can see the bottom one, so they're not tight. I'm going to spin the wheel again, and again I can just hear it's rubbing, and I can see that it's not quite centered. Now it's going to be really difficult to see here, but you can see that the pad closest to the spokes is just rubbing on the disc. So I'm going to loosen these again, move the the caliper in slightly. So I'll do that now. Now I'm going to do it one at a time, so I'll do the top one first, and I'm moving it probably 1/2 mil, if that, at the top. Again, these weren't particularly tight when I did them, and I can see the gap, so I'm going to knit that one up and just try it. It's still sort of, and it's not the disc, because the disc is straight. I can see that the disc is straight. It's just rubbing a tiny little bit. Let's keep going with that. And it's just playing around with it till you get it nicely set up. Hopefully that'll be about it. Now, once you get it so that you can't hear the disc spinning, you can tighten it up. The torque settings, again, if it's a 6mm bolt, torque setting is going to be about 9 or 10 Newton meters for an M6 into aluminium. I'm happy with that. Okay, also on the front of the bike, the front brake hose isn't in the clamp on the forks. I presume it was like that because it was, the handlebars were around the side of the bike for packing. So you need to undo this with a 3mm, 2mm, 3mm Allen key, and I'm going to put the cable in the clamp, and then just make sure that it's not going to foul the spokes in any way. So I'm going to do that now. Right, that's the front of the bike done. I'm going to put some air now into the forks. I'm just going to go off the chart here, and then again, once I'm torquing everything up, I'll set the sag by sitting on the bike and set the sag up for myself. But I know from I think I'm 168 pounds, but I know that if I put about 100 psi in this fork, it'll give me somewhere to work on. So if you don't have a shock pump, you're going to need one. You're not going to be able to do it without. You just take the dust cap off the top, if you can see that in the camera. That screws in. Don't need to do it over tight. So that's got 100 psi in it at the minute. Yeah, so I'm going to leave that to, there's 110 psi in that. I'm going to unscrew that, pop the dust cap back on, and when I set the sag, that'll give me a sort of base to work from. I'm going to do the same, exactly the same with the rear shock. A little dust cap on here, which is quite tight. Let's see how much air we've got in here. I'm going to put quite a bit in here. So this has got 140 in at the minute. It's just easier to pump it up while it's off the floor. So I'm going to put 200 in, and then I'll set the sag from that. I'm sure there's loads of videos on YouTube about how to set up your suspension. I'm not going to bother with that. This is really just about building this bike, and so you can have a look and see what you get if you buy it. Right, what's next? So I'm going to go away now. I'm going to set the handlebars how I want them. I'm going to torque these up probably to 5 or 6 Newton meters. I'm going to check that there's no play in the headset, but there's still free movement. I'm going to tighten these two up to 10 Newton meters, it actually says on there. I'm going to make sure that my brakes are the height that I want them, and just tighten those up. I'm going to nip those up. I'm not going to torque them up, I'll just nip them up because if you crash, I think sometimes it's better to have them a little bit loose so they move rather than snap, but that's just my opinion. What else am I going to do? I'm going to tighten up the pedals, and I'm going to check the torque of the crank bolts. I'm going to look on the SRAM website to see what they should be. I'm guessing at the minute it'll be about 45 Newton meters. It actually says on it, and it says 38 to 42 Newton meters. So I'll check the torque on those as well. Okay, so I have now torqued up everything that needed to be torqued up. I've torqued up the pedals, the cranks, all the handlebars. I've also gone through all the suspension points. I've stripped them down, greased them, rebuilt them, put some thread lock on them, and torqued them all up to the settings that I found online, which was 9 Newton meters at the back, and then 12, 12, 12, 12 and 12 for the others. There was already some grease on, but not a massive amount. Hopefully this will help it last a little bit longer. The only thing that I've noticed coming straight out of the box on the other side of the bike is a tiny little scratch in the front on the frame. Probably no more than would happen the first time I'm going to take it out if a stone chips underneath it. So first impressions, really, I'm very impressed with it. I've got a giant Anthem that I use normally, which cost probably £1,500 more than this, but so far this looks great. I'm going to take it out into the woods, see if it's any good.